And welcome back, everybody, for more Fallout Talk with Rampancy.net. I'm Nargajan.
And I'm Blackstar.
And I'm Jail.
And here we are going to continue not only with the series, but also the games. And Narc, you're going to be playing some 76 in the background? Well,
maybe if we get to it. I don't know. If we have to cut this one short to do more tech support offline, that we may need to do that. So maybe we'll skip the Fallout 76 this time. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Depends what we're in the mood for. Now, out of all the games out there, though, you definitely are a 76 fan. Oh, Decca says Jail is very quiet.
Yeah,
how do I sound, Decca?
You're fine. Okay? Just after the intro,
hey.
I juiced Jail up a little bit because he is a little bit low. Jail, give us a sound check again.
SET 1 2 3.
Yeah, I'm having to add about 12 to that now. I don't know, and that wasn't the case before, so I don't know what else changed. Yeah. But anyway,
we'll have to troubleshoot his setup.
Okay,
but hey, it wouldn't be a Rampancy.net stream without tech support.
Yes.
So,
and just to get the next thing out of the way, which is a huge random distraction, I'm going to put a link in the chat to a YouTube video that I watched this morning that doesn't have anything to do with YouTube. Fallout. It's about Ultima 4, which we also had, and it was on our long list of like stuff we'd like to do some streams or videos about, right?
Yes,
so this is a guy
for those who don't know, we used to play Ultima on like the Commodore Amiga way back in the day.
Actually, the 64. Fan. That one's older. This game didn't even come out until the same year the Amiga launched, and they eventually made an Amiga port. But the original game was basically Apple II, Commodore 64, and then like Atari 8-bit computers.
And this guy made buttloads of money and went insane and changed his name, and there's a huge history behind this.
He was insane back then. Actually, because this video starts out talking about like they had already done a trilogy of games, Ultima 1, 2, and 3 that were all kind of very similar. Click on enemies till they die, top down. But the fourth one was a little bit different. And then they talk about, oh, and by the way, there was another challenge regarding the creation of this game, because you see, Richard Garriott's brother's wife had just gotten a job across the country, so they had to move their entire operation to North Andover, Massachusetts. And I heard them say that. Knows,
a stone's throw from us in sunny downtown Andover.
Yes, the next town over. And my jaw hit the floor. They had video of like driving through blizzards. They said that like these boys from Texas came over and couldn't drive in the snow, and they all totaled all of their cars and all of this stuff. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Like, how could I have not known in 1985 when we bought this game that these guys were just around the corner? And I said to myself, if that can't be true. If that were true, we would have known it. And the reason why I would have known it is because I still have the box that game came in.
Yeah.
And this one's beat up, it's not in good shape. It's held together with Scotch tape and everything. But then if you look at the back of the box...
Does it actually say it in there? Oh my God.
It says right there, it's Manchester, New Hampshire.
Wow.
Which admittedly, now again, to a 14-year-old...
north of... Yes.
To a 14-year-old, Manchester, New Hampshire is not that close. It's not like Salem, New Hampshire, right across the border. It's not somewhere you go to. I know people who've lived and worked there, and it's far enough away that for a child not yet of driving age, it doesn't seem like it's a place you can go.
Oh no, it's a mystery tour of hundreds of miles in the child's mind. So,
but, that many decades later, it did seem weird that these people, just when they started working on this game, which was the first one I played, I had seen like some other schoolmate play Ultima 3 on their PC at home, on their Apple II. And that was why I recognized the game. And that was why I wanted to buy this one. But it's weird that they were in the neighborhood. And that's not even the only weird North Andover gaming personal history connection there is, because I think I may have mentioned this before, or at least talked about it off stream as a thing to do someday on stream. But there's a fictional location in the Western Massachusetts region of Fallout 4 that is based on a real missile defense system location that was planned for deployment all around the country, basically an ABM system. And one of the locations was also supposed to be in North Andover. The only part of it they ever built was that they dug a big pit and then they backfilled it. But in Fallout 4, in the nuked area of that gameplay space, there is a version of that. And the weird thing is that it's a big black pyramid. So it's like really surreal to go there in game, and it's a nuke storm all around it. It's freaky.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, the things we used to joke up as kids, because for those who don't know, Raytheon, who is a big defense contractor and everything, has offices in our town. Yep. So we always used to, it's less than 3 miles from the house. So people always used to joke and say, well, we're a primary target. So if we ever fight Russia and whatnot, we're going to be going like that. So,
and now I live in Washington, D.C. So.
Right. So you're even more of a primary target. The distance right now is 33 and a half miles to Manchester from us.
Yeah. Which is not far by car, But.
No, but if we were to take the T, it would be 12 hours. I can't even imagine.
We weren't going to ride our bikes there. Like when you're 14, what's close is what you could ride your bike to. And that was too far.
Exactly. And for us, that was in town. So
yeah. So I don't know.
Absolutely kills me.
Yeah, I don't know if they had ever had like a business address within North Andover. Maybe that was just a temporary stop before they established, because they took 2 years to make this game.
Post office box,
which was very atypical at the time. Like like single individual people put out an entire game in a year or less.
Yeah, they could have bought a box at the UPS or something, or at the post office. So yeah, I mean that could have been anything.
Don't know. But anyway, just weird connection. Happened to notice while watching YouTube this morning.
That's I got to get that link and put it on my main machine over here, because man, that cracks me up. Because did we even look and read the details of that on the box at all?
I don't know. I mean, we did read the other stuff though, because you have to, because you have to read the books to be able to play the game. You know what I mean? Like,
right. I just don't think as children we made that connection there, and I find that absolutely hysterical. In fact, here, just on a strange note though, you remember our Merlin game, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Do you know that the maker of that actually lived in Cambridge? And
yes,
I
think I did hear that at some point.
Do you know that I actually not only met him, but I also worked on a project in the house where that was developed in Cambridge? Yes, he actually had in his basement, he had this very, very weird setup with all these students apparently working on pioneering some 3D technology. And they had all these like open computers and desks and this very, very haphazardly made, the kind of thing that you would see in, a basement of a large Boston mansion if you were like doing secret subversive technical experimentation and whatnot. I mean, it was very haphazardly thrown together. And what kills me is that the director of the film 3, my film 3 class, he actually knew the person. And when we talked about trying to get some video editing software, because apparently either he or somebody who was working on this research project had access to it. Now, this was like in 95, 96. So this was literally like 2-3 years before iMovie came out, right? So there was very little, if any, digital video editing software, like beyond like Avid, which was like thousands of dollars and whatnot, that was available. And for a project I was working on, I thought not only that would be cool, but I would love to get some experience with it. Well, supposedly he talked to this guy and he had it. So he invited us over. And we had this very strange, weird, contentious visit. And for some reason that is still beknownst to me as to why, but for some reason, our presence there to try and get access to their computers or to check them out or to play with them or to edit some video clips or whatever on it really either pissed off or annoyed these people in this techno hovel. And exactly. It's like, suddenly we're here and we were all happy and friendly. And the guy who made the Merlin, he was happy and friendly. He actually had Merlins stuffed in the top of his closet in the foyer when we were walking around. He says, oh yeah, no, I developed the Merlin. You want to see it? Yeah. He says, oh, my brother and I, we had those. We love those. We played those
everybody had it.
Everybody had a Merlin. In fact, I don't know if you have a picture that you can kick up because, people may not have any idea of what, 70s or early 80s handheld gaming technology was at the time. But yeah, we each had a red Merlin. I think it had 8 AA batteries the thing ran off. In fact, we used it so much the batteries would end up leaking. I mean, we used this thing to death. But apparently the guy who developed it was in a little town just outside of Boston, Mass. And I got a chance to meet him and see where he had actually worked on it and stuff. So that was kind of cool, getting a chance that in college, getting a chance to meet the guy who made a toy that you grew up with playing with as an early teenager. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, yep, see, there it is. Yeah, that's the good old Merlin. So yeah, I don't know if you can just blow up if you can blow up a single one. It was basically a little 10 yeah, I'm gonna get a big one. There you go. It was a little 10 key keypad that had a bunch of different games like tic-tac-toe and memory games and all kinds of other stuff. And it was basically
Blackjack.
Yep. It had a bunch of different card games and whatever, and it had a little sheet and whatnot that had the different games and how to play. But yeah, it had a cycle on-off switch, and on the back of it was a little plastic container that held in like 8 or 10 AA batteries. I mean, it was friggin', a serious battery suck. But yeah, we actually got a chance to go to this guy's house, which was cool. But for some reason, I have no idea why. And yeah, this came out in 78. I was in kindergarten then.
Yep.
So by the time we were playing in the 80s and whatnot and everything, this was still uber handheld high tech. But yeah, for some reason, all the researchers who were working on their own
that
things,
is a lot of batteries.
Yep. Oh yeah. And keep in mind, batteries were expensive back then. Kids didn't have, money growing out of their ears when you're poor. So when that thing died, you were bummed out. You were like, "Oh, Mom, Dad, can I get some more AA batteries?" That's the same amount of batteries
as the Game Gear. Good
oh yeah.
night.
Oh,
people are doing some weird stuff. What is this?
Oh wow, they're doing what? Cell phone mods? Oh, that's cool. That's neat. Somebody stuck a keypad or a monitor
cell phone inside a Merlin case by the look of it.
That's awesome. Oh
yeah, a Raspberry Pi. It's a Raspberry Pi.
Even better. Oh wow, think of the games you could play. Now if he made a Merlin game to fit that Raspberry Pi screen, that would be even funnier. So yeah, so it's amazing all the things that you grew up with or enjoyed, and you don't realize exactly how close you are to all those different things. So yeah, so knowing that we were like a stone's throw from the guy who made Ultima, a stone's throw from the guy who developed the Merlin, and there's a whole bunch of other ones. Anybody around in the Boston or Mass area, it's really, really a cool thing to know that you were actually this close to techno history. But yeah, still didn't understand why he hated me and my director showing up. I really, really don't. Nobody wanted to explain it to us. They all gave us dirty looks the entire time we were there. You guys were jerks. But anyway, so
yep. Anyway,
it feels good to talk about it finally. But Ultimate. So the video that you got, how long is that?
It's almost 2
I'm
hours.
Curious.
It's almost 2 hours.
So
and
I'm
it's
download
everything about the game, creation of the game, how to play the game, how the game is made, a bunch of stuff. It's pretty good.
Hey, after we do an episode, should we do a watch along? Because
I don't know. Maybe I didn't finish it yet. I got maybe an hour and 20 minutes into it, but I didn't finish it yet.
Okay.
Cool. Anyway, but back to On Topic, which was the Fallout TV show. So I'm not gonna have something to say about all the other 4 episodes that I watched since, because I only watched the first half last time. But I will pick out a thing that happened at the very, very end, and I think it bookends really well, because my major example for commentary in the first set of episodes was on the very opening scene, and how the opening scene of the TV show took a cinematic ambition and inspiration that the games had, in that case Fallout 4, with its opening trailer and its opening gameplay sequence, and did a better job of doing the same thing. Because I say the TV show, near the very end of its last episode, takes inspiration from part of Fallout 3 that also had both cinematic aspirations and inspirations, and did a better job of it. And so what I'm going to bring up here.
You got something to show the class.
Yeah. This is a screenshot from Fallout 3. So these characters here on the right, you've got Colonel Autumn of the Enclave, and an Enclave soldier in power armor there behind him. And on the left, you've got that's not Madison Lee. I don't remember which scientist. Jail, do you remember which scientist that is?
I do not,
Okay.
but I think they're casualties.
Not important. But in the center there, in the blue vault jumpsuit, is James, who is the player character's father in Fallout 3, voiced by Liam Neeson. Now, this scene here, normally you cannot see from inside this chamber. We are inside the Jefferson Memorial, which your father has converted into being a giant water purifier. What happens in the beginning of Fallout 3 is that your dad basically decides that you are now old enough to be safe on your own inside the vault, and he runs off and leaves. This causes chaos in the vault, as no one is supposed to leave. It's kind of unclear really why that happens. But the player character then decides that you have to also leave to go and follow him. And so the first part of the game, you're kind of following out, like, what was your father doing up here? Why did he do all this? What was he up to? Where has he gone? Has he gotten himself into trouble? And you basically have to rescue him. And when you do that, you bring him back here and he recruits some scientists to help him finish the thing. And just as we were about to finish repairing this thing and turn it on, these guys show up, the Enclave. They're the antagonists of Fallout 2, and they're here to kick puppies so that you know that they're the bad guys. Kind of the only reason why they are the bad guys is what they do in this scene, because what they do in the scene is kill your dad. They kill your dad while normally you are outside of this chamber, able only to see what's going on. And the conflict is that the Enclave show up and they say, "We've heard you're making this great thing. We want to have it. It should be ours." You're about to turn it on, and strangely enough, in the background there, just next to James, you can see a big computer with a comically large numeric keypad on it.
Yep.
James
it's for people who are hard of seeing, so it's handicap standard.
Yeah. They're about to turn it on, and James tells him, well, you can't turn it on without the code, and only I know the code. And Autumn says, give me the code or I'll kill you. And James,
I'm not gonna tell you.
Yeah, and James says, no, I don't trust you. You can't have the code. And your dad gets shot. And I think it's very clear that, at least visually, there's a lot of similarity between, say, this scene in this game and this scene from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan in 1982.
Now, we are both super fans, so we know this intimately, but I'm still curious as to, okay, what parallel are we drawing here?
Yeah, getting to that.
I figured you would.
So, because basically what happens is that this room has two scenes in each of these works. It has a setup and a payoff in both Star Trek II, and a setup and a payoff in Fallout 3. There is one difference in that the character death that's important basically happens in both scenes in Fallout 3, whereas in Star Trek 2, there's only a death in one, only in the final one. So this is the setup scene in Star Trek 2, where we have this same similar thing, a chamber that is floor to ceiling windows so that you can see inside it. And inside is a very important piece of equipment for your plot. In the case of Star Trek, it's the engines of the Enterprise. And here is Scott during the second fight with Khan aboard the Reliant, saying that he has to take the main engines offline because of radiation.
Radiation. Oh no.
Yeah. Radiation basically is going to cause a death in this chamber, although the deaths that are caused in this chamber are actually caused by Autumn shooting your dad. He tries to kill everybody. Your dad tries to kill everybody in the chamber with radiation, but Autumn saves himself by injecting himself with, I think it's supposed to be Radaway, although it makes the same sound effect and looks like a stim pack.
And it's an easy thing to miss too, because I was just focused on my dad while all that was happening, and I didn't even. By the time I looked at Autumn, he was already unconscious on the ground.
Yeah. So both versions of the setup scene include the fact that, okay, so we've got a room that encloses an important technical device for the plot that can be flooded with radiation, therefore making the interior of this area deadly. Now we have the payoff scene. The payoff scene comes up when the Genesis device is going to go off. The engines need to come back online or everyone on board the Enterprise will die. Spock goes down to the engine room, basically puts McCoy to sleep with a neck bench, puts on just a pair of gloves as the only protective equipment he takes into this room. Scotty flips out, and then Spock opens this and floods the room with radiation. Kirk comes down, and Bill Shatner gets to do the best piece of acting probably in his life, in his entire career.
Yep. Which is funny because it's literally looking at another actor. His best acting is when the camera's behind his head. I also love that first time viewers of this, because I've watched a lot of reaction videos, first time people who've watched Star Trek or gotten into it. And when they get to 2, a lot of them not quite comprehending that he's sticking his face and hands into an active nuclear reactor and why that is bad or dangerous. He's like, what's going on? That's bad? He's getting hurt? Why is he getting hurt? I don't understand.
I also got to admit,
having it right there is kind of odd.
While the room is a good set, and it's one of those things I think I'm always very suspicious of completely diegetic explanations for things, because most fictional worlds aren't created from realistic details outward. They're created from outward details. In fact, there was a big discussion this week.
Production, right. Or production limitations and budgets and timing.
You see those
and
4
hey, what can we do in time
angle
allotted?
at the ceiling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the Klingon modders from the motion picture. So this set is reusing a lot of the Klingon set.
It's repurposed stuff. Well,
you can see the displays. The displays are all the Klingon stuff and whatnot that you think you see in 4 and whatnot. So they recycle stuff all the time. That's just saving money.
Yeah, there was a big discussion.
That's not a problem.
There was a big discussion the past couple of weeks about on social media about the details of the interior of the Nostromo in Alien, such as like, why are there wet chains everywhere, and people looking for diegetic. I know, but that's not the point. Like, the director didn't put them there because condensation. He put them there because it looked the way he wanted a thing to look. And when someone asked him, well, why would it be there? They said, well, it's condensation. And they say, well, why would there be condensation? It's like, it doesn't matter. That's what he wanted the scene to look like. So that's the way it looks that way. And if you make up an explanation about how the ship works and why it would be there and where the water's condensing from, that's extra. That is unnecessary for the most part.
See, the thing is that people come from that from 2 perspectives. One, it's like they have a point of view that they're trying to make here, and they're going to get there no matter what. And it doesn't matter what you say because they're going to plow right through your explanation. And 2, nitpicklers who literally want to pick out anything and everything that they possibly can to either poke holes or to rip apart any universe or design that anyone else made. Say, see, that couldn't happen because, and here's the explanation that I've decided to choose as to why.
Right.
So
we'll get to an example of that as well. I got to admit that, like, there was never, for me anyway, a good explanation for what this was, simply because also, like, they did kind of establish throughout all the Star Trek continuity from 1 and 2 and Next Generation of, like, how the Enterprise engines worked and what the parts of it were, like, for instance, like where the dilithium chamber is and where the reaction occurs and what the magnetic bottle is, and that was that big shaft, which to me actually in motion picture always made sense because they portrayed it as horizontal, which made sense for me that like that must have been down the middle of the ship.
Yes. And they had 2. They had a vertical part and they had a horizontal part because it extended out along the secondary hull. So there was a real world explanation in drawing.
Other than the cells.
But I have to admit, even watching this as a kid, it wasn't clear to me what part this was supposed to be. It's clearly visually presented as it is a threat. Some switch needs to be thrown inside this thing, and because of the malfunction caused by the battle damage, it is dangerous to be in there, especially since he's not wearing the full radiation suit that the other engineering personnel have. That's just that's just how they code that.
Not to mention the differences between the original series environment and the engine room, which you'd seen in many scenes at different points all the time. They had that big. I mean, the only parallel is that big circular part in the room where at several stages they had pulled things out of or attached things to. So there was a former set in the 60s that, of course, was far more open and far more simplistic. So you could draw a parallel saying, well, this is just an updated version of that and they needed access for it anyway.
Oh yeah, just for Amber says, yes, it's the dangerous important part. Hi Amber, how you doing?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
But to me, I hate to say it, but yeah, that one thing, it looks literally like somebody stuck a water cooler in the middle of the room and said, yeah, just expand in that.
Yeah, it is silly looking. And it only works because the entire scene is so infused with emotional importance about what's going on, what it represents, that you don't see it what it is, because what it is not important. It's just a cardboard tube with a thing on the top of it and a visual effect. You know?
Yeah, it just means
it's a flashlight.
Yeah, it's just, well, the sad part is that they wanted a wide shot of getting all three actors and Bones and Scotty staring through the glass in horror at what they see Spock doing. And the problem is that the way they shot it is that they had to go so wide to get all three actors in there. You see everything in that room to the floor, which a lot of times in these science fictions you don't do, because the floor where set things configure and can join and whatnot is usually very problematic. They don't like doing that. So the fact that if they
see all the spike
zoomed
tape
in,
you see all the marks.
So, if you literally zoom in tighter, like if Scotty took one step to the right and Bones took one step to the left and they just zoomed in tighter, it would have been way better if you could not see the floor.
You see all the SDI cables on the floor.
And yes, exactly. And where that thing is standing up and just make it look like it just disappears into nothing. It would have worked better.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway,
I blame the DP for that.
Sure. So that's how that pays off in Star Trek 2. And the way this pays off in Fallout 3 is that eventually you are able to come back, fight off the Enclave, bring Madison Lee with you in here so that you're ready to turn on this thing. You've basically gotten the Brotherhood of Help's Steel to fight off the Enclave by bringing in a giant robot. You can either fight Colonel Autumn, or you can actually do a conversation check where you convince him that, hey man, everything has gone wrong for you. You should just leave, and you can get him to turn around and run away. And then you get to turn on the purifier. But what they tell you now is that it's damaged, and this chamber is flooded with radiation. And somebody has to go into the radiation flooded chamber and enter the code into that keypad. And the intention in the original release version of Fallout 3 is that either your player character, has to choose to do this, which will kill your player character, or you can have a member of the Brotherhood of Steel do it instead of you, in which case they die and you survive. And it's basically, this is the final karma check for your character. Are you the savior of the wasteland, or are you craven and self-interested, in which case somebody else is the self-sacrificing hero who saves anybody, and it's not you? They do change that later by adding a different ending in DLC, Shattered Steel. But in the base game, that was the way they wanted to end it. And unfortunately, it actually opened up a huge number of plot holes, because a mechanic in this game is that you can have a companion character with you. And some of your companion characters, in fact, several of them, could include a super mutant, a ghoul, and a robot, all of whom are immune to radiation. And you could have ordered them to go in and enter the code, thereby making you the hero without having to sacrifice yourself. And they just will refuse to do it in a way that makes no sense and is inconsistent with their characters and their previous actions. They were so devoted to recreating this scene from Star Trek II that even though they really couldn't do it without creating massive unexplained contradictions, not just with details of plot or how various MacGuffins work, but with characters. Like you meet a character who's a super mutant, who you actually let out of prison, who actually helps you by going and retrieving important items from irradiated areas. And this is a character who, if you decide to go into that irradiated area and get the thing yourself, he says, man, you shouldn't have done that. That's stupid. Why did you do that? I'm here. I can do it. And then you get to the end of the game and you try to ask him to do the same thing. And he says, no, this is your karma. This is your fate to do this. And it's just because they were so tied to having this scene, to having this end with this decision to either sacrifice yourself or not, specifically in this transparent radiation flooded chamber, that they stuck themselves, and they had to retcon it. They retcon it out. Basically, they added DLC that basically changed those things so that those immune characters will agree to do that for you, and your character can survive and go on other missions. So, what the TV show did that I found really interesting was that it also redoes this. This is the scene from one of the the last episode. And this is Kyle MacLachlan's character, Hank, who is the overseer of Vault 33. And he's in a bird cage that's very much like the things you see in the game that raiders tend to put some of their prisoners in. And the daughter has followed him here. And what's going on here is that the head of the Raider faction, who are the survivors of Shady Sands, which was nuked, and was nuked by Hank.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. We're supposed to be putting spoiler warners in
No. Sorry. Spoiler warnings. We're spoiling the end of this.
Jeez, Dave. Oh, my God. It's like, hello. There may be people who haven't seen the show yet.
The MacGuffin all through the series is revealed to be the secret to getting a device to produce cold fusion. Although, admittedly, I think kind of weird that the visual they've produced for this actually is water. It was water. It looks just like the scene from the water purifier in the Jefferson Memorial in Fallout 3.
There's also the Keanu Reeves movie about, what was it? It had Rachel Weisz,
Chain Reaction.
Freeman.
Yeah.
Chain Reaction.
Yeah.
That also used
Reaction.
water for fusion.
Yes,
okay.
It's funny because that one actually was absolutely panned for many, many years by everyone, both critics and fans. And it ended up getting a cult fan following because they kept replaying it on cable over and over and over again. And people just ended up liking it. And yeah, that actually got its own little cult appreciation there, so I find that hysterical. But yeah, the aesthetics and the design stuff, since I don't have any history of the games and whatnot, you guys are going to be able to find out way more and have far more appreciation of all the depth of the detail and all the things than I, sadly.
Just like in Fallout 3, the MacGuffin here basically is a thing that's going to help restore America to its pre-apocalypse greatness, right? Clean water, infinite power, electricity. So that's what we're getting out of. We're getting out of this. And what's going on here is that raider leader, the head of the faction of survivors from Shady Sands, wants Kyle to give her the code so that she can turn on the fusion reactor. Just like in Fallout 3, what they want out of him here is the code to turn on the water purifier. And what they tell you apparently is that this Enclave faction is so reviled that they can't you can't even give them control of a thing that's mostly designed to do good. Now, admittedly, there's another character not pictured here, which is the quote unquote president of the Enclave, President Eden, who is voiced by Malcolm McDowell, who secretly wants you to put a poison into the purifier so that all mutated creatures and people are killed by the water that's produced from this. And you can choose to allow this or stop it. But either way, your father here just dies rather than give up this information. Even though at this point, so the Enclave want power. Well, just about everybody on the Wasteland does. It's kind of a gray area place. Nobody's wholly innocent. But he decides to sabotage the thing and let Eden kill him rather than give up the code. And that is the opposite of what happens in this scene. Yeah, John Henry Eden, the AI president.
Eden, the AI president,
Yeah, it's basically a computer. You can talk to him. And there's a bit where you can do a Star Trek logic puzzle thing, and he self-destructs because he can't.
Deca says who you can talk into killing.
Yes, you can talk into killing himself. The standard, standard kind of logic puzzle kind of answer.
I was wondering if they were going to be doing that with the robot in the doorway. When they find that secret Vault 31. And whatnot. I wasn't sure if they were going to be doing anything with the little brain droid. In fact, I was expecting him to be bigger and mechanical, to tell you the truth. I don't know if you guys had that, or is the small Roomba-sized ones something normal in the game. Yeah, because when I saw the evaluation of the entire series and all the different vaults, the one vault that had all the rich people who had removed their brains and stuck them into robotic bodies, they were all relatively big, bigger than R2-D2 type things, with arms and legs and treads and whatever else. But the one in Fallout where you do see the little brain
in the
robot,
TV show,
he's
the
more
little
of a
Roomba.
Roomba.
Yeah, the little brain Roomba.
Is that in the game?
No.
That anywhere in the games? No?
I've never.
So that's different.
I've never seen anything like that in the game. I think that was done just dramatically to undercut it, right? Because you have...
Well, I think it's production. I think they didn't want to spend all the money on something that big and that large, because if it was, then they would simply say, well, why doesn't he just go kill the intruder? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if it was parallel to the game, they'd say, well, we can't have the rest of the game in this scene. So they had to make it small and unthreatening. So.
Yes, it has to be unthreatening. I think one, because you're expecting it to be big and threatening. You're expecting, you don't know what other faction is in there, who's in there, what kind of threat it is, what kind of obstacle it is, and they undermine that entirely by making it something that is physically completely
it's a Roomba with a needle,
not imposing. Poses no threat for you.
Parallels.
And again,
like, hold still. I'm gonna stab you.
And as happens in Fallout over and over again, is also utterly incompetent. Totally. Underscores everything. Actually, a good thing that describes almost every source of violence and power in the Fallout universe is the Top Gear credo.
Yeah.
Ambitious but rubbish.
Totally.
They're all ambitious but rubbish. So that little Roomba with the brain in it trying to stab you like it's the crab holding a knife and not being able to quite manage it is supposed to be funny. Like it is supposed to be funny. Okay, so
and it was. I was just somewhat disappointed because the design of that particular thing, it didn't even resemble the mechanics of the universe and the whole 40s, 50s, futurism that they were going for. It looked very out of place aesthetically.
Yeah,
and I wasn't sure, again, if that was something in the games that they were simply trying to make it look exactly the way that it had been before, or they were going off script and like stylistically, it's like, that doesn't look like the cars. That doesn't look like the bottle machines. That doesn't look like the other robots. Or Mr. Snips.
The regular
Snip Snip. So
the regular Robo Brain design is a better design, and I think it probably didn't miniaturize well, and so they had to create a new thing. And maybe they could have come up with a more consistent design, even for a smaller device. But then again, it's got so little screen time. I mean, that's
totally.
just what they settled on.
I just got RC car / Roomba feels, and they literally stuck the little brain thing on top of it and called it a day. He said, we're out of budget, so let's try this.
Yeah. Okay. So the final resolution that we get here is pretty much the opposite of what happens in Fallout 3, because your dad has to apologize to you for, he killed 30,000 people just because anybody on the surface prior to Vault-Tec calling it's all clear and sending its people up to the surface to rebuild society is a threat. And can't she understand that is the case? And she doesn't. And she tells him, give her the code. Exactly that. It's very much as if the player character in the middle of Fallout 3, when Liam Neeson is there basically saying, screw off the Enclave, kill me. If they had interrupted and said, you know what, Dad, it's okay. It's better that this thing run, even if they are running it, because it's better that there be water for people than not. And at that point, Eden isn't even there. Eden can't even poison this thing unless you go to that location, the Red Rock base, and get that poison and put it in here. So even as far as the game is concerned, if you activate the water purifier in that scene, everything is fine. It's operating normally.
I have a feeling that those who are running the show, who are big Fallout fans, were thinking, if I could redo it, this is how I would do it. And they're doing it in this show.
Yep, I really think they were. And it was nice that I saw a direct parallel, but in the opening and the ending, both taking cinematic things that the games were trying to do in both Fallout 4 and Fallout 3 and seeing them do a different twist on them in the TV show that I think was very satisfying and very true to the setting and true to these characters that they set up. I really liked it.
I gotta say, one of my favorite simple reviews that I'd read on Rotten Tomatoes and whatnot about the game was, "See, Halo, it wasn't that hard to keep to the spirit of the medium." And I just died laughing.
I don't know that it wasn't hard. I think probably making this was pretty hard.
Care. Making this was absolutely hard, but the fact that these people did it, because again, and I don't, for people who didn't see the episode last time, it's like my number 2 reactions, 1 and 2, for when I started watching the show was, after the first episode, my first reaction was, okay, I'm in. They got me hooked. I want to see where this is going. And the second one was, I wish these guys did Halo. That was my second reaction, because it can be done. Because people forever, and I can remember getting into arguments with HBO fans and whatever else. It's like, nah, you can never make it. It can't make it as a TV show. You can't make it a movie out of that. No, that's stupid. Da, 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 da. You absolutely can do it right, because these people did it. And even of the complainers, in fact, the listings on this and whatnot, of course, have been massively popular, both in critics. In fact, critics have been higher than fans, believe it or not. And that to me is just the mark of a good television show production, when you can have a script and intro to characters, and again, an entire world building of something that there were tons of people that watch this that never even heard of Fallout, that don't know the games, that have never played it. They're literally just consuming it as a television product, and they're loving it. So that tells me right then and there, it's like, okay, they got the foundations of making a good TV show, but they've also made, for the fans of the games, a good Fallout show. And that's a double win. But even so, it does have its detractors. There are people, in fact, one complaint was like, the review was Americana over and over again. I don't know what that means as far as a complaint. Apparently they have something against Americana. One person had a problem with the nudity. Gave it a 1 star, because now, can you tell me what nudity was in this that was so repulsive or disgusting to you?
The first episode has some sexual assault in it, as well as some depiction of sexual intercourse. I mean, representation of it.
But they didn't say that. They said nudity. Why so many people naked? So I don't know whether he's watching the wrong show or reviewing the wrong show, but I'm just wondering, honestly, after watching the entire series, do you remember any nudity in it? And if where? Because I'm struggling, other than that sex scene at the beginning, which to me, they didn't really show.
Vault 4, during the Remembrance of Shady Sands, the entire
is the orgy.
Vault community pretty much disclothed and pretty much have a go at it. It's
yeah, you're right. There is a brief scene of full frontal male nudity, which is usually the thing that triggers a bunch of people. They're like, I saw a dong, and
this is one of the things that a lot of people point out in the Bethesda Fallout games. The violence that is in these games are insanely graphic to a T.
Yes,
but they will not show any character out of their underwear. I've
never understood the acceptance of violence, but the unacceptance of nudity. I've never understood that.
That's also Americana, you could say.
It's post-Victorian era perceptions about body normality or any sexuality whatsoever. Even if it's anything active, literally just nudity. Just anything naked. It's like, no, we can't have that. I've never understood that.
And the number one, and some of the number one downloaded mods for all the Fallout games are nudity mods.
Are all nudity mods. Yeah, exactly. Actually, one person, they reviewed and said that it was overhyped. Other ones, what were some of the other ones? Oh, cinematography was great, but my God, the dialogue and plot was atrocious.
What?
Did you thought that?
What?
No.
2 stars this person gave it. Yeah. They said the story and plot was so heavily on contrivances and coincidences. I understand their attempts at stupid satire inspired by the games, but if you have some logical progression in the plot to keep the narrative together.
Coincidence.
Did you think that in any way, shape, or form that would be an accurate review of this game?
Only
this representation
in
of the game.
Coincidence. California is a big place. And this show, in a relatively short amount of running time, gets to a large variety of locations and different biomes. And there are a number of times where even without a plot contrivance like a tracking device or something else, characters just seem to bump into each other as if they're following each other. That seemed a little coincidental, but I got to admit it did not bother me much. You know, I mean, it was just like, oh, hey, now these characters are here. Like, honestly, I thought when they're setting up, the first episode basically spends its time setting up each of our three main characters. And I thought, if this is going to be slow paced, the job of the first season will be to bring these three characters together in one place so that their stories fuse. And instead of that being the goal of the whole season, that was the goal of the first 2 episodes, because these people meet almost immediately. And I was like, oh, okay, we're moving at a good clip now.
Well, hey, you're a big fan of subverting expectations. You always loved Ryan Johnson. So, there you go. You got that right out of the gate. Because maybe that's what they assumed everyone else was going to think, too. And they said, no, we've got to get this thing going. So we're going to be getting to
but I gotta admit,
meet and greet real early.
I could honestly respect and would probably have enjoyed a show that was that slow paced. But I also have to admit that could be so much setup with so little payoff that you're depending on the meat of this being entirely in your second season. That would have been the Halo approach, because that's what you gave me. A whole season of a show called Halo based on a game called Halo that takes place on a location called Halo, where you don't show me a freaking Halo and no one ever gets to Halo.
Well, I just wanted to mention that here's a review of someone who hasn't played the games. And he literally says, never played the games. This is your typical post-apocalyptic show. Quite derivative in many places. It's hard to combine futuristic technology concept with its artsy-fartsy 40s music in an attempt to be interesting, I guess. I fell asleep during the first episode. Production value and quality is high, though. Issue is more of the story and all too familiar, predictable tropes. Was there anything about this season did you find predictable to the point of non-enjoyment?
I think you do almost need the context, though, that this is an adaptation. I mean, this is like watching the Hollywood version of Valerian and saying, man, it just seems like they ripped off Star Wars. And it's like, no, you need to have the historical context to understand this. Star Wars ripped off Valerian. You have to know that for that to make sense. So,
there's a whole generation gap where every time they say, oh, this is just like so-and-so, it's like, no, that was made in 2020. The other one was made in 1985. Stop doing this out of order. Yeah, and then there are people that complain, I know it's out of order. Stop complaining that I'm saying it out of order, because it doesn't matter, because that's not what I mean. And I'm like,
I was just going to add more to that.
You're getting it wrong.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Like, or even what's happening right now with Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon. It's like, I'm going to make a Seven Samurai and Star Wars mix. Oh, you mean like Battle Beyond the Stars from also?
Oh, yeah. Roger Corman's calling. He's got a lawyer he wants you to meet. Yeah, I mean, just... And to be honest, I would love a remake of that, to tell you the truth. Yeah. I would love to have somebody take Seven Samurai.
I would say that review is on the mark on one respect. It is derivative. It's derivative of Fallout, which makes sense given that it is an adaptation of Fallout. The thing that it has is that it is a hyper-violent, dark humor interpretation, not only of what a post-apocalyptic America would be like, but the reasons why pre-apocalyptic America got there, which is why we bother to do flashback scenes, and why Bethesda bothers to put so much effort and time into writing terminals that tell you the stories of what was going on to ordinary people just before the bombs dropped, that tell you how bad it's been for a long, long time. The country was at war for almost 2 decades, and its economy and its politics had collapsed as a result of late-stage capitalism.
That's just a perfect example of contextual necessity. It's all about context. And if you have no context, then nothing you see has any meaning or weight whatsoever. It does not resonate. So for a lot of people, getting a alt-future, retro-futuristic world that they set up that has this history that if you don't accept as read, pun intended, that history that, yes, we've been at war at decades. Yes, there is a nuclear threat of proportions never before seen by man. Yes, this is not the America that you grew up with and the history that you have an experience with. If you're not getting that, then nothing that Caesar goes on will have any weight whatsoever, whether or not you play the games or know the universe of the world at all anyway. So, literally falling asleep in the first part of the episode, he admits to, it's like, well, great. Did you watch any of the others, or is your review simply based on the 10 minutes you were conscious of when you decided to watch this at the end of a long week?
Yeah. Also, I think it's weird. Like,
hardly fair to the show,
50s,
I gotta say.
50s visual retrofuturism combined with post-apocalyptics to a soundtrack of music from the 40s to the 60s. Like, that's not a common combination. That's a description of Fallout and pretty much nothing else. I mean, that's even unique about Fallout in its genre, where it's already derivative of Wasteland, where which was the game that preceded it.
But it's derivative in many places.
Yeah, I don't know. Now, go ahead, Joe.
One could argue that everything is derivative of everything else if you wanted to come up with parallels. But anyway, go ahead, Joe.
It's so stereotypical of a post-apocalyptic setting that I also disagree with, especially with all the post-apocalyptic works we've been getting lately, like Last of Us and The Walking Dead, because I consider some of those shows to be misery porn.
I would agree with that.
Happened. So much, it's like this. Oh, good things happening. Let's shred it to threads and whatever that meant. Well, and there wasn't that much of it in Fallout. There are actually some instances where you think, oh gee, this is going to turn out bad. Oh my God, it is turning bad. It's like, oh, it actually wasn't really that bad at all. Like what happened with Vault 4. And there are moments like that I actually appreciate, where it's like nothing has to be bad because that's the genre of post-apocalyptic. They weren't beholden to that. And I thought that was refreshing especially for a show, because even Halo is becoming a little misery porn with all the stuff I've seen of it lately.
Oh yeah, and again, for the nitpickers out there that dissect those ones of these post-apocalyptic worlds, there's a level of practicality of them that varies greatly, where in this one, at least, when they're talking about needing water, needing radiation treatment, needing meds, and medical supplies and support and whatever else, they contextually bring up a lot of these things that practically you would need and have to survive in this world. And the one thing from just as a viewer of watching people play the game and watching this particular series and enjoying it, I've liked what they've done and how they've created it. Whereas in other shows, like you could argue with Walking Dead and some of the other ones and whatnot, I never understood where are these people getting their clean water from? Where are they getting any of their medical support or supplies or whatsoever? Why has not one of these people ever gotten a sick or an illness from anything they ate or drank? Nobody's had food poisoning or any other of the diseases out there that would be running rampant with no support.
Those things do happen in the games quite a lot.
Oh, I know. Well, see, that's just it. Their attention to detail, that comes up all the time. All the time. So again, derivative, may be, but when you actually view it honestly, you could say that their detail or attention to it is far superior than any of the other ones that have preceded, that you could argue either more popular or at least more accepted. And yet, so for some reason, that level of detail saying, oh, well, yeah, they just get water wherever. It's perfectly fine and whatnot. Nobody ever gets sick from drinking out of a dirty bottle they found in the street. No. At least this show said, you know what? We're going to have a world that's been torn to hell, and you're going to have to deal with all the problems that stem from it. Not just, well, the ones that we want good enough that the plot is going to go forward, but we don't want to deal with all those other things and whatnot. That would bog us down. That would slow us down. Nobody complained about that. They just complained, oh, it looks just like this other post-apocalyptic movie that I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't deal with all the other things that this one did, so how is one more acceptable with less attention to detail in it? You know what I mean? I never understood that.
I can give you the name of somebody else who does like the Fallout TV show. So I'm going to post a link in the chat right there.
Oh, but I know who this is. I know who you're doing.
Yeah, I'm also just going to show it in here. which is Timothy Kane, the guy who created Fallout.
Who created it. I was so disappointed at the end credits when it said based on the video game series Fallout, and I'm like, aren't you forgetting created by Tim
Now they
Kane?
did
created by why don't they put his name in there?
So Timothy Kane was the creator, producer, and lead programmer of the original Fallout game. And they had him at the premiere. And the guy's just a very nice guy, and he liked the show a lot. And he mentioned that, like, at the premiere, Star Trek shirt? I'm not sure. I don't think I see the whole shirt during the video.
Well, no, I saw the triangle and I said, "Oh, is that the Delta on there?"
It does kind of look like it's a Star Trek shirt, but I don't think we see the whole thing ever, so I can't really tell.
But it's the same blue Vault-Tec as you, so there's that.
They had a premiere of the first 2 episodes at the Chinese theater, and so you get to see the actors, and you get to Todd Howard and all this stuff. And he did say that basically he was so in awe of the visual detail that he kind of lost track of the plot and the dialogue because he was looking at all the objects from the world.
He got distracted by the eye candy.
Well, did you talk about? Do you remember the bit where he talked about the loser animation? I thought that was my favorite bit he took. Yes, I actually remembered that.
Right. So there was a bit where I guess some fans on the internet point out that some of the extras in the TV show seem to be intentionally mimicking an animation done by certain NPC villagers in the original isometric games, and choosing to believe that they had done that like independently, that they weren't ordered to do that because there were a bunch of fans of the game who were extras in the TV show, and that they just decided to walk in this particular way as a way of paying homage to the original game.
It's because and more specifically, it was to that character that Lucy first encounters before she goes to that big town, where he takes all of her water. Yep. And it was that guy who was doing the loser type, where he's a little bit slumped down, his arms are dangling, and he's just taking it one step at a time. And I played the Fallout games to take a look at that again, and that was pretty darn close. Because if that was a direction, I don't know how you could get a direction like that outside of from that animation in the games, because it was very common.
Yep. And the only other thing that I remember hearing, and we kind of barely talked about this last time, was the people talking about like, oh, this is Todd Howard. He has finally achieved his ambition of retconning the entire continuity of Fallout New Vegas out of the canon, because Shady Sands cannot have been nuked in the year that the show says it was nuked in, because that is the year that Fallout New Vegas happens, and no NCR character in the game refers to that event. And if it had happened, they would have. And basically, Tim Kane and Todd Howard have both explained that basically by just saying, no, that happens after. And I also find this a weird objection for one very particular reason, which is that there's a DLC for Fallout New Vegas that allows you to send nuclear missiles to any number of targets in the wasteland, one of which being the NCR. I don't know if they've mentioned Shady Sands in particular.
But NCR is a target.
It's okay. I'll emphasize on this point. There are 2 targets you can select, either the Caesar's Legion or NCR. These locations that you nuke are actually, you can actually visit them in the mainland in Fallout New Vegas, and it is not Shady Sands that you nuke for the NCR.
What NCR location? I mean, is it Camp Golf or something? Or where is it? What is the nukeable target in New Vegas?
If you give me a second,
okay. I just don't remember myself. And again,
go find that.
In the show, it's not. In the show, it's not that. It's not the weapons from the Great Divide that are being used against the NCR. In there, it's Kyle MacLachlan. He did it, and which nukes they were or where they came from. We don't care.
They could be from Lonesome
it's not
Road.
necessary to the plot.
That DLC is littered with nuclear warheads.
Oh yeah,
and I could imagine them getting them from there.
Now, also, one of the big design choices of this, which again I think was made to not only give them more creative freedom, but also alleviates a lot of the timeline problems, was that the era that they picked it in is literally after 4 and before whatever the next game is going to be.
Yes.
Correct?
So
okay.
so it is. So this is the latest plot event, and what happened in Shady Sands was, years ago. It just happens to coincide with the end of New Vegas.
Right. So if now, was that not clear to the person who was complaining about the timeline in perception of inconsistencies, or literally they missed that bit, didn't notice it, or just rejecting that as an idea? I
would say they're motivated to look for a conflict. And so they're basically
where
stating,
none exists.
Yeah. Also, the player character is able to create plenty of conflicts. Like, first of all, for instance, like the Fallout games, the 3D ones, even the old ones, they have a calendar, they have a day-night cycle, they keep track of time. When you rest or sleep to heal or anything like that, it keeps track of that. It's one of those things. And the original Fallout games, before they were patched, actually had a bunch of very aggressive hidden timers where a bunch of bad things would happen in the world if you took too long. Like there are entire settlements you can go to and find out that everyone there is dead because they've been killed by another faction just because you didn't get there yet. And it's not even. Oh yeah, it looks like my internet is having trouble.
I was gonna say because it was buffering there.
Yep.
Decca said that.
And this is one of the key things that was a criticism of the first game. The original Fallout game from 97. Oh, and before I forget, the code that Lucy's father, Hank, gives to activate the fusion is the release date of the first Fallout game.
Oh, I did not catch that.
Well, to be honest, I had a feeling that it was going to be replete with those, so I figured if anybody would pick them out, it would be you guys.
Because, in the first Fallout game, you have a countdown to when the vault runs out of water, and... There's actually, and they don't explain this, but after you fix their water problem, there's a hidden countdown where if you don't finish the story, then the more settlements that you visit will be raised by the super mutant army. So if you just take your time doing everything, all the endings say almost every settlement you visit has now been raised because you took long.
Which is realistic, right? I mean, like the world's not waiting for you to do these things. Like the master exists and he has his super mutants and he has a plan and he's going to go ahead and do these things. And if you don't go out there and stop him, and it happens. And if you don't get out of the world, then you don't know it's happening and it just happens without you, and that's it. So,
okay, well, here's an interesting review that ties into this. 0.5 star, overrated Siri, couldn't even finish the S. There was no action. Would you say that this series having no action would be a legitimate review?
No, but I could see I could see someone basically stating that I want this to be like a Monster of the Week pulpy adventure film where you have a significant fight set piece as part of every episode, and it doesn't really have that, but that's not the pacing I would have wanted for this anyway.
Yeah. Or maybe they were expecting nonstop first-person shooting, that everything was
had more
the
fun.
Doom film.
I had more fun with the action scene involving the Squire and his 10mm scopeless pistol moment than I had in a lot of shows recently. What did you think? What did you think of that kind of reflecting the games, Narc?
I mean, I enjoyed it. I'm not an amosexual enough to, pick apart stuff like, well, this gun doesn't look the right way, or like I appreciated recognizing some of the weapons, but I'm not looking for it in terms of inconsistencies.
When the Squire was at the radio station and he sees Lucy and his brother Blake come up, he's like, "Oh shoot!" and he whips out his pistol and he just shoots, and his aim is pretty steady, and he just unloads. But when you cut to him, no one got hit, and he's like, "Look at his pistol." It's like,
"Oh yeah, yes." He makes a crap like he did. Yeah. I didn't have a scope, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe they were doing a tie-in for Pulp Fiction there for that scene.
He just got bad dice rolls. That's what I was thinking. Yes. He had a low chance of hitting the targets and missed every shot.
Back when those games had dice rolls.
I'm waiting for somebody to have a scope where you see the VAT scene where you're picking particular targets and figuring out which part of the body you're going to shoot.
They may save that for second season.
I'm wondering if they do. I was seriously expecting it. Decca says, there is also a timer that if you don't do certain things before leaving, the vault has a civil war after a certain time. So the depth as far as how they're handling the vaults and the timers that are put into it. Yeah, I have a feeling that they wanted progression for the character in the game to be of a certain thing where not only the pressures, but also the choices that you make really have real consequences. If you never decide to do any of this, there is a timer for having it self-destruct, for having them to have a civil war, for there to be some kind of a biohazard, for some kind of other collapse or issue. And to me, that's kind of a cool thing, so that not only multiple gameplays, you've got a bunch of different choices and options that can have totally different results, but there are real world consequences where you could lose entire stretches of peoples, of towns, of whatever, based on the decisions, not only of just what you do, but also of what you don't. And to me, that's cool in many ways that a lot of games either can't or haven't done. So that to me, I think is kind of interesting. So yay.
And
I
and just so I could put a stamp on this, the nuclear launch location for the NCR was the Long 15, which was interstate that was located southwest of the Mojave outpost and is only accessible if the player completed the apocalypse, sending a nuclear missile to the NCR target territory. And this unlocks some actually unique knife and Colonel Royas, who is now ghoulified, and NCR glowing troopers. It's pretty creepy.
I gotta admit, I always thought the Long 15 was just like a theoretical road that led from the the NCR outpost at the edge of the New Mojave and ended somewhere in California at some NCR settlement. I didn't know it was a settlement of its own, but you know.
Oh yeah, and there are crashed vertebrates all over the place too.
Mm-hmm. Now here's a question that I want to give you for you longtime players and fans. Were you guys as heartbroken? And I guess we're going to go into spoiler territory here, so I don't want to, if anybody doesn't want to be spoiled, turn away now. But at the end of it, with the loss of the NCR/Raider group, there was a lot of blowback that I heard from fans that were super pissed, that saw this as the loss of the NCR. How could they get destroyed? We're huge fans of them. Da 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 da. And as a non-player, I don't have that kind of emotional attachment. Yeah, see, I mean, he's got memorabilia. So obviously it has a following. It has a fan base. There are groups that pick those factions and love them in the games and are far more invested in those characters and that progression and that story. Did you feel at much of a loss and over a problem? Because Jail said there were scenes at the end that he cried at, and I'm just wondering if he had an issue with how the NCR was handled or how the Brotherhood was handled at this stage in the timeline. Because all the history obviously is different for the games leading up to this stage. But now that this has happened, do you feel betrayed? Do you feel annoyed? Do you feel that it shouldn't have happened? Do you wish it didn't happen? Do you care? Do you just see this as just another step in it? I'm just curious as to the impact for you of what this group and these characters right now, knowing what you know after watching this thing, what are your thoughts and feelings?
This is one of the things that the previews of the series kind of spoil, because you remember when I made that call back, Narc, when they showed that they were at the Shady Sands location and it was a big crater in the middle of it? I was like, is this a different Shady Sands? Because that wouldn't make much sense given the timeline. So, but I will say it's because I have been a fan of these games. I played the original demo on the Mac through the Inside Mac Games CDs they mailed out. And yeah, I remember going to Shady Sands, and I remember the first mention of the New California Republic was in the epilogue to the first game when you helped Shady Sands out. And I remember visiting the NCR again in Fallout 2, where you meet the very, very older Candy, who is the president running the NCR. You get to see some of the politics that are going down. You get to see what is happening. Like, I mean, the series doesn't really go into it that much, but Shady Sands and basically all the New California Republic came from Vault 15. Mm-hmm. And that's not a detail I remember hearing in the series, which I thought was kind of a, well, if they're not Vault-Tec, they're our enemy. Well, it's like, well, they kind of are. But I will say,
Deca says, yeah, well, it ties into your point here. As it goes, Deca says, yeah, starting 3, the NCR was a non-entity until Vegas, which didn't endear me.
Yeah.
So
the Bethesda Fallout games all take place on the East Coast at locations where their artists and writers were able to scout locations. Boston, DC, West Virginia, et cetera, Maine.
And this was such a strange moment in the series, too, because the moment where Lucy is going through the museum and she sees the timeline of Shady Sands, and then she looks at the whole NCR flag, first, they decided that was going to be the moment where they play the Fallout theme.
Yeah, the Fallout 3 theme.
The 3 and 4 theme.
It did make that did not make sense to me.
Was that by design, or was that an error, do you think?
Well, here's the thing. I'm a big music buff, so yeah. I know the works of Mark Morgan and stuff like that, and the music for the first 2 Fallout games are mostly very atmospheric.
Yeah.
The first 2 games never really had a theme.
Yeah, they don't. There's no heroic music. There's no motif to play from
there's
1 and 2.
Thematic,
where you're
emotional resonance with it.
That's the Fallout tune. It doesn't have that.
Right. Okay.
The first 2 Fallout games don't even have combat music, and even Fallout New Vegas, which was also composed by the same composer of Fallout 3 and 4.
I still would have used that if I'd been them, though.
Well, there are some fan edits of the end credits to the last episode where they actually use the New Vegas theme.
Already? Wow. Oh, that's fast.
Yeah,
okay.
already.
Well, speaking of the music, do you know what's really funny? Because I was going to joke with Narc the last time we did the podcast or the streaming. And sure enough, when it was done, I actually had this thought in my head. It's like, I wonder if Mom would actually like this. And when I went to talk to her, guess what she was watching?
She was watching Fallout?
She watched Fallout.
Oh, wow.
She loved it. She absolutely loved it.
I gotta admit.
I wanted to save this for you because I wasn't sure if you talked to her yet.
No, I didn't.
Sure enough, she loved Fallout. My mother is in her 70s. She has never played or heard of a Fallout game before. She loved it.
That's hilarious.
Here's the other thing. Oh, here's what's more hilarious. All the ambiance with the 40s, 50s music or whatever else, she knew them all. She knew the artists. She knew the singers. She said, "Oh my God, it was so great to finally hear so-and-so and whatnot." And I was like, "You know them?" Goes, "Oh yeah, I grew up with this." Yeah. So this is literally music she listened to as an early teen.
Because because in Fallout 3, there's a bunch of tracks from the Andrews sisters, to give you the idea. And the show reuses a lot of the music that 3 uses as stuff you hear on the radio is played at some point in across the episodes. Less so some of the stuff that's in New Vegas, but it is there is there.
To be honest, they actually used "We'll Meet Again" early. Yeah. I thought they were going to save that for last. They used "We'll Meet Again" because that was such an homage to Dr. Strangelove. Yeah, I really expected them to use it, but I figured they would save it for the last episode because I honestly expected this to end with a nuclear bomb going off.
Go ahead, Jeff.
This was my fault because I sidetracked it. But back to the NCR and how they handle them and how I felt like that. I would say no. Because I thought what would make me feel really bad about it was if they just said, "Oh well, the NCR was just another America, and obviously they need to be wiped out again because America stuff." If they had done it that way, I would have been crushed because yes, New Vegas did show.
That's what New Vegas does.
New Vegas does show that the NCR has a lot of problems, and it's not all hydro, but. The one thing I did appreciate in this is it doesn't say outright that the NCR is completely gone because Shady Sands was just one location.
Yeah.
And even in Fallout 2, where you still had Tandy, they were still trying to negotiate and expand beyond it.
And not necessarily even the most populous settlement in the NCR, although it was the capital.
Yeah.
In fact,
but again, not the largest. There are others, and there are more of them. And with Moldaver, I hate to say it, but the introduction of her with the whole vault assault with the raiders and whatever else did not me endear to her me to her character or the plight of the group that she's in. So that was kind of a false flag or a red herring there and whatnot.
They're not really,
and again by design, I'm sure.
They're not really the NCR. No. The same way that, say, the Remnants aren't the Enclave, the way the what's the other what's the other faction in 3? No, what's the other Brotherhood faction in 3? Because the Brotherhood faction in 3 is not really the Brotherhood. Yeah. Brotherhood. But then there's the Outcasts. Who basically have left the fake Brotherhood in Fallout 3 so they can be more like the real Brotherhood on the West Coast, and they're like, like jerks. They're complete jerks.
So even in this just one point, the complexities are vast, so that again, there's so much depth to this and variation and subtlety and details that again, if you don't get, you're not getting all of it. So I can understand why for the TV show, getting all of or even some of this in there and doing it correctly is a real challenge. And I think they pulled it off. Yeah. So.
And obviously what happens when the Brotherhood decide to reacquaint with the Outcasts, they become jerks, all of them in Fallout 4.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now, there was one thing, Narc, do you think, and this is going back to one of the flashbacks with the round table, and by the way, Big Mountain,
I thought that was awesome.
Yep. I thought that was amazing, because that's Mr. House in the flesh, and Big Mountain, my favorite DLC of New Vegas. Loved that shout out. Do you think that the conversations that they had in that meeting room now are pretty much doing away with the spaceship plan? Or do you think
you mean the Vault-Tec idea? No, I don't think so. I think maybe they just don't want to reveal that yet. I would say, put it this way, having a Vault-Tec representative in the plot of the TV show coming out and saying to the camera, well, we're selling the apocalypse and now we have to deliver it. It's the most straightforward statement of that idea that we've had, because otherwise we've gotten hints at it. For instance, like the bomb at the center of Megaton in Fallout 3 has a Vault-Tec logo on it, which, doesn't necessarily mean that we were bombing ourselves. It could be that, a plane was carrying ordnance somewhere and crashed, or it fell off. It could be lots of things, but
we have a B-52 who carried a nuclear bomb in its cargo that crashed here in North Carolina.
Okay. See, there you go.
Yeah. No, there've been a bunch of Broken Arrow incidents. Yeah. And there's a lot of them that we don't even know about. Yeah. So there's a lot of missing nukes floating around even today in our real world.
So having it be that explicit, I can imagine that they would like to leave some reveals for future surprises for characters later on. Oh, yeah. So they're not going to divulge all of Vault-Tec's plans and dirty dealings, all at once. Because again, the underlying story here is supposed to be is that all these weird, twisted Vault experiments are supposed to be collecting data for how you get the human race into spaceships to colonize other planets. In other words, it's to simulate a restricted, closed environment in which people may face a large number of varying challenges. And of course, it's the sadistic version of that. And there's never any clearance of how and where they're going to collect this data so they can make use of it.
Well, lab rats. They're all just lab rats,
Right, but where is Vault-Tec to be collecting the data that they're going to make use of it?
Right. Well, yeah, the compiling and whatnot, they may not have thought of that. But to be honest, the biggest, coolest reveal to me was the corporate boardroom scene in the flashbacks that Goggins has, where you get a chance to see Robotech and Vault-Tec and in fact, was Nuke Cola there? Because I saw a video where people were saying that. Okay, well, see, Nuke Cola and whatnot, I swear, there was a video that somebody posted that they were like the worst company out of all of them, strangely enough. So I was wondering why they weren't there.
Robco, Big Mountain, West-Tec, Vault-Tec.
Right.
Who else?
I'd have to go back to the episode and fire it up. But just that thing with the discussions of and what laid the plans and their intentions and how it turned out and what I hate to say it, I could see that really happening. I believe things like that are probably happening today, right now. And that to me was the real horror of this game. It really, really was. So,
Hey, keep in mind, by this time, the United States has already annexed Canada, and the very first bit of action that you see in Fallout 1 are 2 American soldiers in Canada wearing power armor, and there is a prisoner of war in front of them, kneeling, unarmed. They shoot him in the head, and then they laugh. They do this weird, janky animation where their heads bob, so you can tell they're laughing.
Well, there's also something in that shot that not a lot of people point, but this is obviously being videotaped by someone out in the bushes, and you're thinking, "Oh my goodness, if this guy gets caught, he's gonna get in trouble." And then the guy who shoots the unarmed prisoner notices the guy with the camera, points to him for the other guy, and when the other guy sees him, then he just puts his hand up and waves. He's like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" It's like, no, they just killed this guy, saw that they got filmed doing it, and was like, "Oh, no biggie, how's it going?"
Deca says, the Enclave are Republicans. He said, most of the Nuka stuff is actually involved in the 4 DLCs. So I'm curious as to how or if any of the future TV shows are going to be reflecting any of the DLC information. He basically says the Outcasts were the West Coast loyalists.
Yes.
From Navarro. Oh God, I played Fallout 2 within an inch of its life, and when I saw that one lady was the pilot of that vertibird that crashed on the outskirts of Klamath, I had no idea that was ever gonna get a mention again.
Yeah. Now,
and again, it's those little details that I wish, being more familiar with the games and everything, that would resonate, because they obviously are chock full of them, and I love the fact that they care that much, so that the fans get a little taste of everything. So I think that's a really cool thing.
Here's an analogy I actually came up with that someone mentioned. Like, for example, the destruction of Shady Sands and a major portion of the NCR, that kind of comes off for people who haven't played the games as a destruction of Alderaan. It's like, oh no, Leia's home is gone. We never visited it. We don't know anything about it. It's symbolic of like that. But for people who do know, it comes off much, much differently, so it doesn't hinder one.
It's like, I had friends on Alderaan.
Yeah, it works better for some people. But it works well enough for the story for people, whether you know that or not. It works better on people if you know that. Like, as a person who entered Fallout through Fallout 3, my experience of the NCR is New Vegas, not Fallout 1 and 2. So I don't have that sense of like, this was a positive influence on the wasteland that I contributed to by saving Tandy, by doing all these other things. I experience it as a crumbling, corrupt, militaristic state that is struggling with several other forces, almost all of which might be in some way worse than they are, but that doesn't really make them good or even great. And I have a feeling that for a lot of people for whom Fallout New Vegas is their favorite game, or their first game, or both, a lot of them tend to go for either the house ending or the yes man ending, which means they're not siding with the Legion because they're comically evil. But they're also not going for the very, middle of the road neoliberal NCR angle either. What they're going for is the Elon Musk ending. They're going for the house boy genius, solve everything with technology, protected his own city, has his own army of robots, and resists both factions equally. The third way, this kind of stuff.
Robotech way.
And there's 2 versions of that. One of which is basically you just side with House, and you bring an army of robots to the final battle, and you defend yourself against the Legion, but you also do it without the help or cooperation of the NCR. So when the NCR swoops in at the end and says, "Now we're going to take over," you say, "No, you're not." Or you can kill House and do all of that yourself. And basically set the player character up as the leader of an independent New Vegas.
Right. Where you become Neo the One and save the world.
You do a lot worse than kill House, my God.
Now, here's one question that I had, because this is one thing from just a technical standpoint that I thought that it irked me a little bit. And again, spoiler territory for anybody that doesn't want to be spoiled about the ending.
Yeah, I put a spoiler warning in the title, by the way. I added it.
Oh, thank you. Because when they actually activate the fusion reactor, right?
Yep.
And suddenly they shunt power to the entire region.
Yeah.
All the lights just come up. And I'm like, okay, when was the collapse? How long was it? And these were obviously areas devastated by nuclear weapons, which again have, electromagnetic pulses, but they also have infrastructure that either doesn't exist or is severely damaged.
Yep.
When they turn the lights on, what?
I said,
hold on.
I said to myself in that
from
scene,
an electrical grid standpoint, because all it takes is for one of these lines to go, and you've lost entire blocks.
Well, not just that. All right, it's like they've set that location at a real world location. Okay, it's the Griffiths Observatory outside of L.A.
Yes,
this is a location that other gamers have seen in other games because it's present in GTA 5.
It's been in countless TV series. It's been in countless movies and whatnot. Hell, it was in a friggin' Voyager episode. So, I mean, anybody who's familiar with the area knows the area and the valley around it. So,
and the thing about electrical distribution grids, right, is that they're not designed to carry power equally in all directions along all lines from place to place. So there's power is supplied from locations and is split off, is amplified, is stepped up, is stepped down in various spaces. So you would have needed a big infrastructure works to make sure that the lines that connect Griffiths to the rest of the city were not just enough to bring power from someplace, enough to power that area, but enough to power all the city. And you would have had to have that in place before you had a working power system, which was the MacGuffin in the show.
Right.
So,
okay. Well, see, Becca says, even in the games, the infrastructure was oddly intact. And I'm like, okay. So my question is, in the games, did they say that, okay, their cable isn't on the streets anymore. It's actually secure underground where animals, elements, and damage couldn't take place?
Not detailed.
Is there any in-game explanation as to how and why that would work?
But I will say there is not explanation, but there is precedent. So you do see
there is a reference to them that happened.
You do see a lot of power cabling. And for instance, a lot of the power cables that you see in Fallout 3 are very accurate to real world transmission. So the big transmission towers that we would see during our Thanksgiving trips to Pennsylvania, going through New York, New Jersey, and all of that drive. The ones that look like they have cat ears, and the other ones that look like various animals and stuff. They have all that. Fallout 3's got a bunch of those. A lot of them are knocked over and entirely wrecked. And Fallout,
again, if that's the case, then no worky.
Yeah, and Fallout 76 though does have a gameplay mechanic because there are 2 or 3 power stations located around the map, and you can repair them. And if you repair them, then during that game session, as long as you're there logged in, camps that you've built that are in the proximity area around that power station will have additional power available to them over and above what you build yourself. You can build little gas power generators or medium-sized nuclear generators as items in your camp to power lights and equipment in your camp. But if you have repaired the local major power station, it will provide free power to you and everyone else who builds their base in that radius. And there's never an explanation of how that happens, whether it's wireless or, anything like that, because it's just there and there's no cabling system to do it. It's just magic.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, because wireless didn't seem to be a big thing. I mean, they have radio, but it's not like they have Wi-Fi. It's not like they do the computer datization that we have.
Yeah.
So
there is wireless power in New Vegas, but it's mostly used as a weapon. A strangely ineffective weapon.
I figured parallels for that would be more Tesla era. So, I'm sorry, what?
I was going to say, well, you can divert power to some of the NCR regions. You don't have to dedicate it to the weapon.
Yep. Okay. So my question then after that though is now that power is on there, how long is it before things start to fail? Because this is obviously a grid that is not had sustained juice into it for several centuries.
Yeah.
Also, so how many fires are going to be taking up and happening all over the city, of which there's no water or fire department to put any of these things out. So, you know, again, it's like, okay, if you accept one thing, well, okay, the things that follow thereafter. And again, this game does have, this series has a lot of details in it. The games have a lot of details in them. So I was just curious if there was anything that, not being a fan of the games and not a player of the games, that would canonically fix that particular issue, and apparently not. So
not
again,
that I'm aware of.
It came up for me, but I did not want to pass judgment yet, like a lot of people would. A lot of people would be, again, who didn't like it, would be dismissive of that, and I was just curious whether you guys knew if there was a real world explanation as to why that particular thing was acceptable or okay, because that was the only technical one that really jumped out at me as far as this fantasy world.
Now,
so what I want to know is, was that a permanent fixture of the whole fusion generator that she activated, that the Brotherhood of Steel can't really disconnect or disassemble or reverse engineer?
Yeah, see, the question now is,
break it or blow it up,
are they going to take it? Are they going to blow it up? Are they going to relocate it to where it's someplace more secure? Are they going to then put a giant base where they can now protect it? Or are they simply going to want to remove it and bring it to their own facility or locations or vaults or whatever? So,
because before she died, she did establish that the Brotherhood could still use this, and it was up to that other guy.
Their usual instinct would be to hoard it. In fact, the only version of the Brotherhood that we've seen that is willing, let alone capable, of managing a communal resource mostly for the good of most people is the DLC you see in Fallout 3, because they are the ones then in charge of administrating the water supplied by the purifier. But even that DLC goes and shows that, you know, not everybody involved in doing that is really dedicated to doing that.
Right, exactly,
Such that everybody is supposed to get equal access to the water, but they end up having to ration it. There's literally a ghoul character that is buying some of that water and selling it as a cure-all to people, to ghouls, even though like ghouls are healed by irradiated water. This is non-irradiated water, which does nothing for ghouls. It's just a con. He's charging them money for something that doesn't do anything for them. And the worst part of it is that if you as a player character did insert the FEV into the water purifier, then he's actually helping exterminate himself and people like him, because the object of President Eden was basically saying everything that's happened as a result of the war, all the irradiated creatures, the mutants, the ghouls, everything needs to be gotten rid of. It needs to be eradicated. It's eugenics on a grand scale. Anybody who's not pure must be eliminated. So this ghoul, by doing this little con on the side, is eliminating his own people unknowingly. So it's, I mean, that's really dark if you've chosen that particular ending.
There's so much of this thing that actually is. Deca says, best guess, decentralized power grids, hence the fusion core generators powering the buildings. Okay. And he also said, the Lions Pride East Coast Brotherhood is, I think, is the Brotherhood that you were thinking of.
That's the one. That's the one that's running the water purifier in the East in the Shattered Steel ending. Now, Jail, I wanted to know, in that final scene in the TV show that we're powering, the skyscrapers, what are we actually looking at? Is that the boneyard?
What, I mean, when Kyle MacLachlan overlooks this?
No, that's New Vegas. That's New Vegas. He's going to Vegas. Yeah. I mean the city whose lights come on when they turn on the generator.
Right. When you're looking down to the valley, what's in the valley?
What settlement are we looking at?
Observatory. Yeah.
And is it populated?
I think that's the boneyard. It can't be not Chase Hands Up. Oh, give me a second.
Okay, but the boneyard is not really a populated settlement.
But that's also only dealing with Fallout 1.
Right.
And it's been over a century since Fallout 1 where the show takes place.
Right. So I mean, but as far as we know, it's not a populated settlement because it's never been shown to us that it is. Maybe it already is, or maybe it will be once it has power and water.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember that location because it was one of the locations that introduced the death clause for one thing.
Yeah, right. But I'm saying the boneyard in the game is a dangerous place. It's not a safe area. It's not a town where you go to talk to people. It's a part of the wasteland where there are monsters.
Right. And here's the funny thing about the death clause, because apparently some fans were disappointed that there wasn't any of the show yet, and the showrunner said, "No, we desperately want to do them, but we don't want to waste them." They apparently there's such a big thing in the universe, they want to put it in a series, and supposedly I know, but they didn't do the big. Huge,
there's a bunch of stuff that's not. I think maybe the biggest surprise to me was no super mutants.
No super mutants.
We did see. We did see. See, that's the thing.
We did see one.
Because
we did see one.
What did we see?
It was in the Enclave base on that gurney, and it was covered up. You could see its big green.
Right, but you didn't see it running around.
Okay, I missed that. I'll have to go back and watch it again.
Because that's another question that I'm having asked. I mean, and that was actually going to be a point about how the NCR could still be alive, because they're obviously showing the Enclave, which has gone through not one, but two whole destructions of their entire slate in the games that they're set in, now having a facility that's, doing all this stuff that even the Navarro base wasn't doing. So I'm curious how much of a threat they still are in this setting now.
Right.
I have one thing to say about that.
What?
Somehow the Enclave returned.
Yes. Bring it on. I want that X01 power armor to come back. That's going to be the best thing, especially if it's all practical.
You Republican, you. Deca said, are they bringing back the sentient death clause?
I don't know. That's such a minor point, though, really.
But they have their fan base. No, the point about the death clause is that people reviewing this who hadn't seen all the episodes, that's what they were complaining about. So it's not that they wasn't in the series, it's that they weren't in the episodes that they had seen.
Yeah.
So
go ahead, Joe.
No, but the thing that I have is so the NCR they what was her plan after she got the core and got it online, because that happened. But my question is that the moment that happened, or if anybody knew about it, what was in her mind thinking that she could defend it or stop anybody from stealing it or destroying it?
You know what I mean? I don't think she thought
I don't know what her plan was after she turned it on and gave power to the Valley.
I think the parallel is very much to the Liam Neeson character in Fallout 3, which is that it is my life's work to bring this to fruition. In his case, it was the Purifier. In this case, she kind of wants revenge for Shady Sands, but she also wants to create a thing that is potentially a civilizing influence. Scarcity is what leads people to fight each other, and abundance is what allows people to live in peace. So I think the idea is that if you could create this, it's a genie that won't go back into the bottle, even if you break it. That once these technologies are rediscovered, reinvented, put into place, and are not secrets hidden in somebody's lab somewhere, that they will get out and they will help people.
I would say her goal.
No, go ahead.
I would say her goal, if she didn't have the Brotherhood reigning terror on her, was she was gonna try to rebuild Shady Sands to what it was, and maybe if there were any NCR survivors out there, she could reunite them to come back and help rebuild it, since they now have this power source that they didn't have before. I mean,
okay, here's my question then. If her design was she gets the power source, they suddenly have a resource that they never had before, which is free electricity and power, for which they can build tools, they can build weapons, they can build all these things, they can rebuild Shady Sands. Okay, what's to stop somebody from nuking it again? Because if you think about it, the only way that, again, that abundance that everyone thinks to have, that everyone needs to have it. And the only way for everyone to have it is that she needs to be able to replicate this and give it to everyone. Because for there to be any lasting peace in rebuilding the world, you've got to take all these factions that are now all very much set aside to protecting themselves and projecting their own will and interests. The only way to take that away is to get everyone in an area where they are defensible to the point where attack would be pointless. And if everyone has abundance of power and clean water and resources and food, there's no point to attack anyone else. So
the way I see this,
unless you can replicate this tech, it's no good, because all somebody has to do is take it away or take it for themselves.
Okay, well,
that's
first
that's the
let
point.
let me get this point. Do you remember the Garden of Eden creation kit?
Yes. Of which I'm not sure how
that,
many are left in this universe. I don't know how many exist.
Okay, so in Fallout 2, that was the goal of the game, was to save your village with the Garden of Eden creation kit. There was one in Vault 13 that was not used, and there was another one on the Enclave base that was also not used. You can get two of
which
those
is
things
basically a
once.
Genesis device, which tells me that the Star Trek 2 influence was going on even before Fallout 3.
Yeah,
like,
it's a parallel.
Well, not only that, but the Garden of Eden creation kit also hints that this is their method of terraforming new worlds for their
for the space travels, of which everyone's are lab rats for. Yes,
and both places that use the Garden of Eden creation kit, Arroyo and Vault City, have been prosperous in trying to establish their own community and stuff, and they haven't been nuked. And what I think about this is it's hard to answer your question about what's stopping it from getting nuked again, because we still don't know the direct of how.
Anything can be nuked at any time. I think the idea is that like people who despair are the people who say, why bother to do or say or build anything because it all could get nuked. And the civilized world is built by all the people who say, well, that's true, but it doesn't matter. I will do it anyway.
Right. Well, see, the other thing is that even if one element was just to destroy what she created. The other thing was to prevent someone from taking it over, because even in getting the device and activating it the way that she wanted, we wasn't able to hold off a single assault by another faction. So
I'm sure part of the plan was that you should not be attacked by that faction at that time. You know what I mean?
Right. So was that just bad timing? Or it was super sad, but it's just like, now all this effort that you've gone through is now gone into the hands of somebody else. So the idea that even if she got this thing, she would be able to protect it from anyone else, obviously did not come to fruition at all. She either vastly overestimated her ability to defend it, or she completely underestimated just the Brotherhood, which are technically like next door.
Well, I think
find that weird.
You could chalk it up to a single-minded obsessiveness, which basically said things will be better if we have power, just like someone would say things would be better if we had clean water. And you could always say that, well, someone might stop me from doing that, and someone might take it away from me once I make it, and someone might break it after I've built it. And all those things are always true. But at some point, some group of characters has to decide they will try anyway, even though the Enclave might come along and take it over. The President Eden might try to poison it. The Brotherhood will take it over and run it incompetently. Ghouls will buy the water and sell it for money. You know what I mean? Like all these bad things will happen, but you can't let that stop you from trying to do a good thing. You can't let anybody perfect be enemy of good.
Yeah, but anybody that is looking for good knows that not only is the genius in the details, but it's always the things that you don't think about, and it's never just one thing. You know, if you're obsessed about the one detail of getting the power supply, plugging it in, turning it on, yay, world better. Yeah, no, that is a super oversimplistic view of it, of the depth and interest of these characters they presented would not have. They're smarter than this.
A lot of the factions are characterized by obsessive short-term goals without really a good explanation of what the long-term vision is. Like, for instance, the Brotherhood wants to hoard technology, but they don't have a plan or even an interest in establishing a stable, peaceful, self-sustaining society on the surface. They don't care about that. And a lot of your character interactions with that faction in multiple games is trying to get them to care about that. Is trying to get them to say, it's nice for you to go and grab all the gadgets you can, some of which are dangerous. You know, I mean, they satirize that more heavily in the TV show than they ever did in any of the games. Because in the games, for instance, what you do is that you can bring a lot of pre-war tech to the Enclave and they'll pay you money for it. They'll exchange things for it. You bring them weapons and they'll give you other stuff. And in the games, it's the poor guy saying, basically, they send us out to get toasters. Like they don't know important pre-war tech when they see it. So they grab everything. And they kill anybody who tries to stop them or anybody who has it, and they don't really have a vision for establishing a stable society.
Which pretty much puts them on the same page as raiders.
Kind of, yeah.
Well,
I mean, they go in, they think they got a right to it, and they bully other communities to surrender it, or they kill them.
Exactly. The only difference is the perceptible vision. It's like, oh, they're killing and raiding because they need to eat today. And they're like, no, I'm killing and raiding because I want to build or make something else over here. The thing that I find fascinating is that the parallels between the inclusive singular society or the external forces of the vast societies. You've got the vaults underground and you've got the wasteland above. Inside the vaults, the problem is, well, now you've got this lovely, stable, happy society where everybody has what they want and everything is good and wonderful, and we're going to continue on living as long as we can, and the world is going to be great. But what destroys that is the internal problems or the experiment designs unknowns to the particular occupants.
So either the inbreeding.
Right. Well, but again, when you have a society which is a microcosm of itself, the perpetuation of it to a certain point, all the problems are internal. Do you know what I mean? It's literally hey, we're going to eliminate all the external problems out there in the world, and we're just going to concentrate on ourselves. And even those fail all the time.
Yep.
Even when you eliminate all those things. Whereas above, you've got everything to worry about. You've got your neighbors, you've got the environment, you've got food, you've got water, you've got radiation, you've got electricity, you've got people who are going to shoot and take it from you or nuke the city you live in. All the external problems out there and everything are the same type of problems. It's just that they're extroverted rather than introverted.
Yeah.
To me, I find that parallel. Well, both of them are failing horribly.
Yes.
In different flavors and ways.
Yeah. It is a repeated theme across most of the game that isolationism is a bad and failing strategy. Almost every settlement that cleaves to it faces extinction. Starting with the very first game, which is that hey, we seem to have a completely normal control vault, and the water chip fails. We only have so much time. Everybody's going to die of thirst if you don't replace this. Or you could leave the vault. If you don't want to leave the vault and you don't get a water chip, then that's what happens to you. In New Vegas, the Brotherhood is also not very proactive. The last time they were active on the surface, they got into a war with the NCR that they basically lost. They retreated to an underground bunker. And then your job is to either try to get them to come out to involve themselves in what's going on the surface, or the alternative to that is you eliminate them as a threat by going in and blowing them up and killing them all underground. I mean, that's the kind of thing that faces every one of the factions, whether they're Brotherhood bunkers or whether they're vaults, that the only way to be successful is to open yourself up to some degree. And the greater the degree to which you refuse to do that, the worse your fate is in the Fallout universe.
Yeah. Because to be honest, on a lot of these, and again, it's a sci-fi trope where everybody out there has their simplistic view of what an idealized society or the perfect Eden would be. And they're all wrong and or failing in one thing or another that is never obvious to the person who has that vision because they can't see it. That's their blind spot, is that they cannot foresee or refuse to look at or see the elements that need cooperation and other things. They just think, well, if I just eliminate this, everything will be fine. If I just move here, it'll be okay. If I just dig a hole in the ground and stick only the good people in there, everything will be perfect. And that's never the truth of it. And what I love about, from the show's perspective is that, especially after the corporate reveal, is that there are no good guys at that table. They're all just bad in very, very different ways. So it's never a good or a bad. It's never a positive or a negative. It's literally just different teams. And I find that dynamic far more interesting rather than the typical, say, Destiny 2 darkness versus light saga, where this is good, this is bad. We be on the good side, they be in the bad side. We kill them because they be bad.
They've tried to undo that
simplistic and boring. Again, see, they've tried to backpedal from it. Yeah. But for 7, 8, 9 years, That's exactly how we were looking at it. So in this world where literally everybody is evil in their own ways, every has their corporate interests on what team they're on, whether it's Team Vault-Tec, whereas Team Robotech, whatever. I find that far more interesting because each of their visions, which is incredibly flawed, all of them are completely off the kilter as what they think should be. But they come up with the concept of saying, hey, let the best idea win. Everyone is going to compete the same way they did in the corporate environment in the post-apocalyptic horror environment that they're about to create. And I find that interesting. I really, really do. And all the people that they're bringing up, like Hank and all the ones out of that microcosm of that corporate survivor vault from 31, they're just simply replicating those ideas in a whole different playing field after they drop the nukes. And yeah, I think that's an interesting show dynamic. So for the people complaining, post-apocalyptic tropes, it's derivative of all the post-apocalyptic shows that have been before. No, it's not. Because none of that has been in any other one that I've ever seen. Can you think of one you've seen where that dynamic has been in play? I haven't. So maybe their review is based on the first 10 minutes of the show they fell asleep on.
Of that, and I think the show does a good job of translating that from the games to TV show. All right, I'll tell you what I think what we should probably do now is that either we're going to take a break and come back and keep talking while we play Fallout 76, or we're going to wrap up and try to help Jail with his technical problems. Or what shall we do?
I think we're 2 hours in. I think we should just call it early because we're wrapping up the show discussion because I think is what it is.
Say that, but I did. Let's see, where the heck did I put that thing? Oh yeah, right here. I did do it in Microsoft Paint because I don't have Microsoft Paint. But
do you have Visio?
Oh, you got a diagram?
Yes.
It's a little washed out.
Okay.
It's very washed out, but I got it.
Just take a picture with your phone and send it to us, and we'll take a look. All right. So, do we have slides of upcoming shows?
Yeah, but honestly, it's just a big TBA. So basically, like next Saturday, no stream because I have to work. And
you got the weekend off, guys.
The Sunday after that, maybe something, but I don't know what it is. We did think of a few things we could do. One of which is they just added ship customization to No Man's Sky, so we could take a look at that.
Hey, wanted that since day one.
But
that would have saved me a lot of hunting down ships.
Yep. So that's it. That's all I've got. I mean, I really like the show. If they're going to do more of it, I'm looking forward to it. We'll see how long before I go for a rewatch. I don't know.
Yeah, supposedly there is a season 2. Yeah, I'm going to be watching it again the first chance I get. There's so much I got to watch now. I mean,
I was really surprised that Mom liked it because honestly, I think like I wouldn't even have recommended it just because like wow, it was violent. It was so violent. Like that first episode, I was like, gee, normally I would tell my wife to watch this, but I don't know. It was really violent. I was a little bit.
Mom's watching the Bourne Identity movies like every other week. So yeah, no, she
I don't know, man,
has
but that
no
guy
problem with violence whatsoever.
His whole jaw came off and everything. You can see it. It was the gore. Like I would say, like the Bourne movies are violent, but they're not gory. Bond movies are usually violent, but not gory. Fallout the games are gory, and the show is maybe not as gory as the games, given that like you see shotgun blasts turn people into bloody bits that spray to the edges. It's like Quake style.
I just love that she was literally watching it as I was going to go in and suggest it.
Did she finish it?
Oh God, yeah.
Really?
She tore through that. She literally decided to marathon that puppy because when she likes something, and in fact she's chomping at the bit for the last Shogun episode because she's absolutely Shogun. Oh yeah. No, she absolutely loved it. She tore through that within like less than 2 days, I think. So yeah,
I will say fan. That.
But I just love the fact that she grabbed it. Sorry, Jill.
I was just gonna say that Ghoul character is a level 115 next to level 10 and 11 characters in this show. He is so OP.
Well, that was one complaint. Somebody said, "Wait a minute, how do you get that one piece in the armor?" I don't get that. So yeah, he didn't like that particular scene at the end there. I didn't mind it so much. I like the fact that there are so many different things that are overlapping within the world that even they're creating, and how much that ties into the games, I honestly couldn't tell you, because again, coming from a non-player perspective. But there was nothing in there that even the problems that I had with it, because again, the show's not perfect, no show is, but none of it detracted from me enjoying it or accepting or ruining my suspension of disbelief with it. Absolutely none.
Yeah, I didn't feel betrayed
since
by
you guys
it at
are
all.
the same way. Yeah. So highly recommend. Don't listen to the naysayers, because they are few and far between. I mean, literally, I'm looking at the ratings on it right now, and as of this broadcast showing, it is currently let me back up a second. I get to the master rating here. 94 critics, and this is what I love. It's actually here. 94 critics and 88 fans on Rotten Tomatoes. When the critics are even higher, yeah, that tells me that it's definitely good. But even of the fans that are watching it, it's still got 88% of those, and that's over 1,000 ratings. So not a small segment. There are people who didn't like it. So again, it's not satisfying everyone, but still, it's definitely worth a watch. Highly recommend. And now it does have a season 2, supposedly. The approvals and or thumbs up from not only fans but also the showrunners is it is going to have a season 2. So now that the high problem is, though, the bar is so high, now they just have to not screw it up. And that's hard to do. So now the real work comes in, where they've got to do a season 2, let alone maybe a 3, where they don't screw it up. Because once you get a hit show with a season 1, it's only downhill from here. So now they've got to maintain or even exceed. Can you imagine them exceeding the quality of the first season? I'd like to think so.
And the showrunners haven't even left.
I think so.
Two showrunners, and they're gone.
Yeah, until they get distracted by something else. Like that's like if Westworld has a weakness, I think it's because it started just so strong that there really wasn't anywhere to go. Complicating that story made it less clear and not as good. And I think the creators were distracted, but they went on to do something else because they started. Yes. I think they left to start working on the peripheral.
Right. They abandoned it. They didn't know how they were going to end it, and the people left over to the holding the bag were like, "What do we do now?" And
in an ideal universe, each season of Fallout gets a little bit better until they have a season that's just as good as first season Westworld, and then they stop, right there.
Right. Well, see, to be honest, I've always been the volition that I would rather have 1, 2, or 3 solid, great, perfect seasons than 6 or 7 that wane off and go down. And the perfect example I can think of is Community. Community started off absolutely in its own level, and then it just completely petered off trying to push 6 seasons in a movie.
6 seasons in a movie,
No, they were whole seasons and whatnot that just absolutely, they could not, from a quality standpoint, maintain the highlights that they had in other seasons. I would rather have had 3 or 4 tight seasons of that and no movie than 6 seasons that were...
Now, if they're smart, I mean, I don't know how they're going to do it now, because again, like Bethesda wanted to become more than just a 2 IP studio, and now dev cycles are getting so long. So where normally you would have been expecting to be getting a new Elder Scrolls game around about now, instead they gave us Starfield. And then Elder Scrolls 6 is now what they will release next, which means that Fallout 5, if it's on the same schedule, will be even after that. And you're looking at 7 or 8 year dev cycles now.
Well, let's just,
I guess the smart thing
is Black Star. I think the Fallout series should go on for 6 or 7 more years.
Wow, really? Okay, so he wants more equal better, huh? Okay, well that's...
I don't know.
No. But that would help alleviate the wait for the next Fallout game.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. I mean, ideally for cross promotion, right? What you want is enough seasons to come out long enough that you don't actually end the series. You just release Fallout 5 instead.
There you go.
That's the next season of the TV show.
It'll be bookended. Yeah, it'll be bookended. That's fine. If they want to hold off until 5 is ready, I'm okay.
Because when you do, if you're going to do that with Fallout, now you got
that's 15 years away.
Which ending is canon? I mean, Narc, what do you think they're going to do with New Vegas? now that they're hinting that we're going to possibly go to it?
I guess the question here is that they barely showed House, but I guess my question is, would they have bothered showing House if they were going to choose the canonical ending where House is dead? So I was guessing that House is alive. And if House is alive, then either he's fought off the Legion, resisted the NCR, or he triumphed and Vegas was independent. But the last image, people are saying that like when Hank walks off in the power armor towards New Vegas, that it appears to be ruined, that it appears that something has happened to it.
Yeah, well, see, that was a question I had. It's like, what is the condition of New Vegas? And did you see lights in it or whatnot? I don't remember seeing any lights. It was there in the daytime.
There are even settlements around it that have lights.
Yeah. So are they getting the same grid power as the observatory? I don't know. I'd be kind of curious if they're tied together. If it's a national grid or a local grid.
They've got the Hoover Dam and Helios 1. So
so it's different power grid.
Yes.
And I'm surprised there's no flowback from collected lines since they're obviously nobody maintaining the electrical grid at all. That's a whole nother thing.
Pay attention to the details at the end credits that actually did a back pullback? Okay, this is interesting. First off,
I did that for all of them. What did I miss?
There's a crashed NCR vertibird in the middle of the road when we pulled back from
I saw
the
that.
Lucky 7. And there are a lot of broken, what were those New Vegas robots called that Mr. House controlled? The
Securitrons.
Securitrons. There are Securitrons littered all over the place. And the gates are not present anymore. Like, the gate that you had to pass through.
You could argue that either an NCR ending includes continued conflicts between both of those factions that would result in either the destruction or at least, battles of attrition between those factions.
Yeah, and there's a cross-population of tech because there are NCR logos all over the vertebrates. I'm looking at that clip right now.
Is it possible that maybe Mr. House is going to be in this in a different way? Like maybe there's an AI of him?
Yeah, well, Decca said House had a backup and Vegas is independent anyways. Yeah, supposedly House had a backup. So
No, he's proposing that. He's saying, or House had a backup and Vegas is independent.
House had backup.
That's all possible.
Whether he lived or died, it wouldn't undo what they may have plans for him if they decide to bring him back.
And by the way, Blackstar, you'd like that character because that character in Vegas
probably
kind of looks like the throwback version of Tony Stark in the Avenger movies, but he's voiced by Rene Auberjonois.
Odo from Deep Space Nine, he owns that role. Blackstar,
I would love that.
Yep. It's a great performance. You'd definitely get a kick out of that if we played New Vegas.
No, I loved Odo. Okay, so now the other real question before we bail, Starfield series, yay or nay?
No,
nay.
Doesn't need one.
It wouldn't be about anything either.
No. See, that's just it. Because my one big joke for this thing is that there is so much in Fallout that it would be hard to make it into a TV series, but they pulled it off. Now the thing is, can they do the inverse? Can they take Starfield where there's absolutely nothing in it, and can they make something good in a TV series?
Who would want it though? The thing is, like the Fallout property has long been something that somebody wanted to adapt because it's visually so strong because lots of reasons. I don't think there's any reason to chase. I'd like to make a TV show out of Starfield.
It's like,
Starfield,
can you figure out a way to stuff an empty bag?
Starfield itself, I think, ended up like just beyond having a few nice aesthetic ideas, just kind of sterile and empty and shallow. And I really think that in terms of their major plot, just seemed too devoted into the idea of like, let's repeat Skyrim. Skyrim was a big unexpected success. Let's repeat its structure. And I don't think it worked.
Nope.
Well,
that's a whole other episode.
How you said?
No, I know, but I just wanted to leave it on that question mark.
That was what they said was the point.
I know. That's the sad
that was
part.
the point. Because, the NASA
part.
astronauts were probably bored when they were up in those spaceships and going to the moon and not seeing anything. But you know what? They loved it because they were first. It was like, you can't make that analogy with a game.
Space exploration is incredibly slow and boring.
Oh, Dicka says lack of mod support. It doesn't lack mod support. It has mod support. There are Starfield mods. I mean, what it doesn't have
lack
is
of
that
interesting mods.
You need. Well, that's different though. That's not mod support. Like if this is the same engine, it can be modded. It can be modded in the same way, but you need enough people who like the game enough to make mods that are interesting. Yes. Whereas Elder Scrolls games and the Fallout games all have a massive number of mods, from everything from just minor upgrades, quality of life improvements, to massive new content elements.
Yep. I just love the parallels of the problem of one being too substantive and trying to change a medium, whereas something is completely lacking in substance and trying to bring it to that same medium. I like that inverse problem. I find that interesting.
They need to find a way to make Starfield interesting before they try to shop it as a TV show.
There you go. But again, I'm waiting for somebody to put on a poster saying, "Hey, they did it with Fallout. Let's see if Starfield series."
It'll take as long as it took for Fallout.
Mankind has been renewed.
Okay,
my face is tired.
I'm waiting for the face is tired show. Oh my god, that's awesome. Oh, let's get an Andromeda show. Okay, well, I think that's going to be it for us. We've been rambling on for a little over 2 hours. Please feel free to check out all of our exciting adventures here on our YouTube channel at rampancy.net, and for all schedule listings and updates, though they may be Spartan or sporadic, please feel free to check out those on our rampancy.net/schedule page. So until next time, though, I am Blackstar, he is Nargajan, he is Jail, we are Rampancy, and we certainly hope to catch all of you next time. Thank you for watching.
Bye.